Welcome to the Comics Coffee Metal Podcast, episode 23.
Hello, and welcome to the first Halloween episode of the Comics Coffee Metal Podcast. To celebrate, you guys get both a trick and a treat. The trick is that I am doing absolutely nothing different than any other episode, but the treat is my guest, comics writer and Halloween aficionado Dave Scheid. Dave's written a bunch of young adult, young readers material ranging from Official Trolls comics, Adventure Time, Avatar The Last Airbender, and a bunch of his own creator-owned books like Wrapped Up and Spooky Sleepover and just like a whole mess more. On top of being just an excellent human and hilarious writer, Dave loves Halloween, and I can think of no one else to ask to come on for this episode. Dave and I have a pretty fun talk about video stores, remastered music, and Halloween appreciation, and just a ton of great spooky stuff. So, sit back, grab a few pieces of candy, and enjoy. Dave Scheid. Let's do it. Okay, so Dave, there's a ton of stuff I want to talk to you about, especially this being the Halloween episode, and you are the ultimate Halloween guy that I know. So I want to get the questions of the podcast just done right out the gate. So let's get to it. Comics, coffee, metal. What are you digging right now?
Okay, man, that's a heavy question because those are three of my favorite things right now. So
I mean, if it was, this podcast would not exist if so many of us didn't feel that way.
So I think I've been what have I been reading lately? Comic wise, I've been rereading a lot of Hellboy stuff.
Nice.
I tend to try to do that once a year. It's not really working really well because it's already, October, and I've barely read anything lately. So yeah, I always like to revisit Hellboy in October. And then I'm also currently reading Investigators. That's a really funny middle grade book by John Patrick Green. I'm really digging that. That's really funny and goofy. It's two alligators that are detectives. So it's really fun, really cool art.
That sounds awesome.
And so I've become a weird Aldi person. So I got this weird caramel apple coffee at Aldi, which most people are probably going to groan and think that's disgusting or whatever. I'm boring, dude. I'm all about Dunkin'. Dunkin's my go-to coffee.
But it's popular for a reason, man. Yeah. It's just solid coffee. You know what you're getting every time.
Yeah, super consistent, and it's just the vibe is just there, just like me, and then just 50-year-old union guys and just me hanging out. So it's kind of so yeah, Dunkin', and what was it there? So metal. Oh man. So I really love Between the Buried and Me, and they just reissued one of my favorite albums, Alaska. And it's cool because I didn't really know that was a thing, and it's cool because I've heard that record so many times, and it's cool hearing it. It's almost not like hearing it for the first time, but they definitely tweaked it to kind of match their current sound, which is really cool to see. And that's just really exciting hearing stuff that I weird guitar parts I never really heard because they're buried in the background and stuff like that. But I've been digging that a lot. And there's a really awesome band called Skeleton that I've been digging a lot. I don't know if you ever heard them.
I've heard of. Can't say I've actually heard them though.
Yeah, they're sick. They're kind of I guess they're kind of similar to Power Trip, where they have that cool kind of crossover thing where they're kind of black metal, they're kind of punk, they're kind of thrash, and they do their own thing. They have a self-titled record that's really sick that I've been into a lot lately. So yeah, those are the current ones I've been into.
Cool. Yeah, I like it when bands, I know a lot of people don't like it when people release remastered stuff.
Yeah.
But they just released a Pantera Reinventing the Steel remaster, and kind of a remix actually by Terry Date, who did some of the earlier albums. And I never was I didn't not like that album.
Yeah.
Originally, but hearing the remix, it just fits so much more in line with what they did in the past, and it being their last album, I feel like it was kind of nice to have it be a more cohesive sound and mix style that with the previous stuff that they did. So yeah, I'm totally all for remastering and remixing and all that. I remember I was getting into Megadeth a little bit, and at some point in the early 2000s, they like remastered everything and remixed everything, and a lot of people like hated it.
Yeah, they like re-recorded vocals and stuff. I remember that. Like,
Yeah,
Rust in Peace had like different vocal tracks and stuff. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So it was just like, okay, well, I'm still not a huge Megadeth guy, but
yeah,
I was vehemently not a Megadeth guy. I was Metallica all the way, and Megadeth out of spite and the fact I just didn't really care for his voice.
yeah,
But it's grown on me,
yeah.
So, but yeah, so when I hear the remastered stuff, or like I don't have a frame of reference for that, and
Oh yeah, to like what it sounded like before. Yeah,
yeah.
it,
So
it's
when I,
yeah. I was gonna
but
say it's weird. Like sorry, like I feel like music is the only thing where people are like weird about stuff for the most part being remastered, because I feel like in movies, there's a 4K transfer and people are super stoked, and like, a comic's reissued and they,
yeah,
sometimes recolor it in good ways and sometimes not, and even like books, they'll reissue it with like a different cover or like,
hmm
new epilogue or something. But I feel like music seems like the only thing like people are like very, very protective of, which I get, because I think it's easier to get attached, I guess, to it's like a song. It's easier to notice like the differences in it. Whereas like,
hmm
when you watch a movie, you're not going to be like,
yeah.
oh,
Well,
hey, I couldn't see that guy in the background. Now I can. This is, this sucks.
well,
Yeah.
look at the latest Spider-Man game.
Yeah.
They like completely changed the model they were using
Yeah,
for
that's
Peter
weird.
Parker.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
And I have no skin in that game. I don't have I have a PS3 that still has Skyrim on it that I haven't touched in over a year. I'm not a gamer guy. I
Yeah.
don't. But it was kind of surprising to me though, just how quickly they're like, oh, we're remastering the Spider-Man game for the next console. And
Yeah.
I guess financially it makes sense for them and all that. And people seem generally jazzed about it, other
Yeah.
than having an
Video
opinion
games.
one way or the
Yeah.
other
Yeah. Video
about
games
the
are
change.
always stoked on that. I feel like that's another thing where people are always down for like reissues, even when they mess it up, because that happens
Yeah.
quite a bit too. Or they'll do like, I think like the PS3 era, they did a lot of those like HD remakes, and they were just like,
Yeah.
up the resolution.
hmm
And I know they did a like a Silent Hill collection, which I'm like a huge survival horror fan. Like I love Resident Evil and Silent Hill and all that stuff. But they reissued those in like HD, but they were like awful because they just like look like garbage. Like they did just a really bad job of like, updating it or whatever. And
hmm
with stuff like that, I could see why people get upset, because it is, you think it would be a cool opportunity to like revisit something either you've played before or, missed or something. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I think just as someone who like creates things and helps make things, there's a certain kind of like relief of just finishing something and just letting it go. So I could like see how the need to revisit something and want to make it better or try something you weren't able to do before. But at the same sense, it's kind of, I kind of just like to leave stuff as it is, you know what I mean? And
hmm
learn differently, especially with comics and stuff. And kind of, at least for me, I'm able to, it's not that I revisit my work a lot, but it's, I read all my comics all the time now. No, it's weird, like kind of just, browsing through something and kind of seeing the progress, I've made, starting off from like, the stuff really early in my career and stuff I'm making now. And I'm sure for you, it's the same thing with like an artist. You could way more easily see like the difference between, how you were drawing 10 years ago and how you're drawing now, so
Yeah, definitely.
I see the merit in like remaking stuff and all that, but at the same time, I'm kind of, um, I kind of like the pure original version too,
No, yeah, definitely. Especially with, comics, like I can look back at stuff I did 5, 6 years, a year ago, and there's I wouldn't want to go back and redo it at
Yeah,
all. I'm glad
sure.
it's done and it's out there
Like
for
you
good
did
or
it
bad.
there, yeah.
With music, so yeah, when I finish like a comic or whatever, I don't tend to go back a lot to it,
Yeah.
just because if I see something I don't like, I'll be like, okay. And then if I see something I really do like, I'll just like find a way to be negative about it in terms of like, oh, well, I'm not, I really like that, so I guess I'm not getting any better.
Yeah. And the stuff that we notice as creators is way different. It's not the same as like what a regular reader is going to notice. It's easy to like obsess over that sort of stuff, but I've kind of learned that it's like just best to kind of just do it and let it go, and then see what happens.
Finish is always better than perfect.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. Yeah, see, that's awesome.
Yeah, but like with music, like it's kind of funny because I can listen to the music I write and all that. I can listen to that as a listener.
Yeah.
But for some reason, like reading my own comics as like having that separation outside of it as just as a reader, I can't do that.
Oh yeah. You're too close to it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's nice to just be done with things.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. No, that's I have a lot of people, younger creators and just people in general asking for some horrible reason asking me for advice as if I'm somebody who knows what he's doing. But it's cool though, because it's that's the thing I always tell people though. It's like, it feels good to finish something, even if it's a 1-page comic or a zine or 10-page comic. Just like get an idea out of your head and complete it and see it. I feel like just as much as if you have an idea for a song or something that's been bugging you and stuck in your head, like just getting it into the real world is just very therapeutic for me, and it's something I'm kind of driven mad by. And that's so much of like my process, I think, is just if I think of an idea enough and I can't stop thinking of it and it's just like stuck in my head, that's kind of how I prioritize things, and I don't know, it's great. It's just being able to finish something's awesome. And I think being able to look back on something and say, hey, this was cool, but maybe I could have done this better. Or, hey, but on the flip side too, you could be like, hey, this was actually really cool. I work good in this format. Or, these types of stories maybe aren't fun for me to tell. Maybe I should try and do this or that. I feel like it's, with anything I make, it's sort of a learning experience. So I always try to take something away, take something from everything I complete and finish and work on, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, totally. And I wish when I was first getting back into comics, like in my mid-20s, and I was flirting with, making comics again, I wish that was something that was like hammered into me, like just finish something.
Yeah.
Just finish it and then move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
Yeah.
Because that didn't really click with me until I'd done a few of the 24-hour comic days at Challengers Comics in Chicago when they hosted that. Where an artist will, they were hosting and a bunch of us would get together for 24 hours straight and try to bang out a 24-page comic.
Yeah, that's wild. Did you ever finish one?
I've finished 2 out of like 5 attempts.
Okay, I could literally never do that. Props to do that. That's crazy.
The best one I ever did, like I finished like 2 hours early.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, like speaking of remastering, that's actually a story. I'm like, I should go back and like just do that one for real. Like, but once I did that and I finished something, it was like, oh, okay, I kind of feel better about that. Even though it was this incredibly rushed, nonsensical thing that had, I had a giant, this is just before Pacific Rim, but I'll call it a Jaeger, but it was Bootsy Collins. It was a Bootsy Bot.
As you Bootsy Bot, yeah, that's good. It's solid gold.
Yeah, so it was just God, that was so stupid.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about other things that were in the comic. And it's the funny thing is I was doing them like next to like Ryan Brown.
Yeah.
Who like mastered like the 24-hour hilarious comic, and Mike Norton, who like set the high standard with like the quality you could put in for a 24-hour comic like 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
So it was like, incredibly depressing at the time, but looking back, I'm like, oh wow, I finished this thing, and that helps.
At the same time too, with like just showing like community, like especially with Chicago in general, how like varied people's like careers and styles and things they want to do are. And that's the coolest thing about comics in general, at least with our community, is that it's welcoming in the sense where we have dudes who do image comics, and we have people who do indie comics, and we have people who do zines, and we have people who do kids comics, and it's still like at the end of the day, we're still all writing stories and creating art, and it's cool having that little tiny thing in common, even if the comics I'm doing are about mummy children and gorillas and love potions and stuff. Whereas like someone's doing like Witchblade or something, it's still cool that you could still find that common ground with other creators and artists and stuff like that. And I think that's why events and comic stores and stuff like that do such a great job of like bringing people together, because you still don't try to like, oh hey, I want to do what he's doing. It's still, you're all just kind of hanging out making comics, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and I have yet to, I'm sure there are, because it's just law averages, but I have yet to meet a fellow creator that was, based in Chicago or in the area that has been rude or dismissive.
Yeah.
It's all like, oh, you do too, cool. And everyone's just been like super accepting, which is for, the typical neurotic, anxiety-filled creative person is like overwhelming and amazing at the same time, where it's like, they're welcoming me with like open arms, and it doesn't matter that like I can't draw as well as they do or write as well as they do. They're not talking down to me. They're just talking shop.
Everyone's just hanging out, drawing, and doing weird shit together. So I think that's what's cool, and I think that's a big step. I think when you're trying to figure out like what you want to do and the work you want to create, it's cool knowing that people are going to support you regardless of like the kind of weird niche you find yourself in, because I think with my career in general, it's kind of weird. I never really set out to, hey, I'm going to make kids comics. It kind of just happened naturally. And honestly, it was just through the support of having a community and having, comic shops that would stock my zines and, support my books and throw parties where I'd be introduced to people and all that. I still had this weird kind of natural path, but everyone around me was doing vastly different work. It's not like I was hanging out with people who were doing the stuff I'm doing now. It just kind of ended up naturally. But like I said, in the sense, that's cool, because I think that's what like a good comics community is about, is just supporting everyone regardless of what they do. Like I would be horrible trying to write like a Witchblade comic or something, but like I have friends who do that and who like thrive at that, and the same could be said about, there's people who can't write for a younger audience. It's just naturally just not how it works, and it's cool just kind of having that like support network, I think, with a really good comics community like Chicago. Yeah.
No, yeah. And I feel like, at least in my experience, that whenever someone kind of finds their thing in the Chicago comics community, everyone's like just really supportive of like, okay, that's your, everyone's like genuinely happy for everybody else. Like, when, Ryan Brown first started coming around and everyone saw how funny he was with his comics and all that, like it was like this huge embrace in the area.
Yeah.
And so it's been really cool to see that happen with, people time and again. And I kind of remember, I'm trying to remember the first time I saw one of your comics. It was, I believe it was a Kickstarter.
It might have been, was it Spooky Sleepover?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's the first time I actually saw one of your comics.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh wow, this is really, this is really fun. And I'm like, then I saw you kind of like, I don't know how soon after that you did Wrapped Up.
Yeah.
But it just kind of like seemed like such a natural progression to me.
Yeah.
And it seemed like something that just like fits so well.
Yeah.
Because, I'm really waiting for my daughter. She's 4 now, and I'm really waiting for her to be old enough to give her your books.
Oh man, that's great. That means a lot. I appreciate that. That's awesome.
And I'm kind of stoked about that for, a lot of the people I know who do, kind of younger stuff. And even when they get older, like I'm more excited for them to hand them like, yeah, here's Daddy's friend. He made this book. Check it out. As opposed to, here's what Daddy did, because they're not going to care. If seeing the lives of like, the bigger more popular comic people and their kids, they don't care. They don't care what their parents did.
But But I think that the cool thing with that too, just in general, is making comics for kids for like a living. I think when you're little, books and records and TV shows and all this stuff, when you're a kid already kind of exists, right? So when you're able to like tell a kid, hey, you see this book? Yeah, my friend did that. My brother did that. My neighbor did that. It messes them up because they think it's this special thing, and it kind of like brings it down to earth a little bit, and it's a really easy pivot to, if I'm at an event or something, right, and then I meet like a kid who loves Wrapped Up or something, it's really easy to just be like, oh, hey man, how old are you? Oh, I'm 12. Oh man, I started writing stories when I was your age. Like you should. What do you write comics about? What do you write stories? You should draw. It's really easy to just make that like unlock that little part of their brain, because they normally don't think that's like a possibility to write stories or write music or any of that stuff. Like until they actually meet like an author or they know of someone who knows somebody who does cool stuff like that. Kids love that stuff. Like kids love knowing someone in their city or their neighborhood does this really cool thing, because it's like, hey, if he could do that, maybe I could do that, and I don't know, that means a lot to me, being able to do that. And I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't have people when I was younger encouraging me to write short stories and just get really into monster movies and toys and video games and stuff, like that sort of stuff is really important and really matters, and having that opportunity to be that person to encourage what could possibly be a whole lifetime of, music or comics or whatever, like it's not hard to inspire kids, and it's like, that's like my favorite part of the job, is being able to do that and, make books for such an awesome audience,
No, yeah, definitely. And I think one of the biggest things I miss about this year, I'm not a huge, traveling con guy. I do C2E2 in Chicago, and then after that, I just do a bunch of library shows.
Yeah.
Those, we did that one, I believe, was in Arlington Heights.
Yeah.
And I love that one. That was actually really fun.
Yeah, it's
and
great. I would love to do that again.
And there's just, but the thing about the library shows is, like, even for me, I don't do kids books.
Yeah.
So whenever I go there, it's always the week before. I'm always like, oh crap, I don't have anything for kids. Like I've preteen teenagers, sure, I can do that. So then I'm always working on fun little sketches and stuff for them. But it's still fun to have them come up and have them, like I tell everybody, like, if you can do like a local library show, you're not gonna make any money or some money, but it's just such a fun day to spend a Saturday. And those kids, they treat you like you're a damn wizard.
Yeah.
And then you get to show them, like, no, you're a wizard too, man. Like, you can do this. And I think the year we were both at Arlington Heights, a kid was showing his Godzilla comic. Was it?
Yeah. That was.
And
awesome.
That thing was so awesome.
Yeah, they were like two brothers, I think. Yeah, I remember those kids.
Yeah, I remember. I think I was seated directly across from you, and I heard you talking to him about it. And I was actually getting excited. I'm like, oh, I hope this kid comes by. I want to see this guy.
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, and that happens all the time too, man. Like seeing kids' comics and art and stuff, and it's like, it's a thrill, because it's like I said, you could be that person to, encourage kids and give them, feedback, and just be like, oh, this rules, dude. Like, this is awesome. Like, keep doing this. It's like not hard to do, and we kind of owe it, to the younger generation to encourage that, because it's like other people did that for me, and it would be unfair for me not to give back a little bit and, try and keep this weirdo thing going,
Well, as you said, it's like the easiest thing to do to inspire kids. And it's such, not only is it just such an easy thing to do good in this world, it's also just, if you think, not you're being selfish, or I would consider it being selfish, but it's also like really good for yourself. Like it's such a simple thing. Yeah. Even like the few times, like I've had a teenager come up to me to show me their portfolio, which I'm like, I don't know why you're asking me, but okay. Yeah. But I always made sure that I always wanted to be positive and encouraging. And there's one kid who I saw 3 times, and each time he was getting better and better and better. And, and I was glad I remembered him.
Yeah.
Not that, I'm ultra terrible at remembering people, but
that means a lot to people though, when you remember them. You need the time to say hi or wave them down.
Yeah, each time he was like, I don't think you remember me. And I'm like, oh, no, you did this page. So, and he, that seemed to, register with him. Yeah. But it's just such a rewarding thing to see. Like, I was more excited to see his growth than I was in seeing anything I was getting better at.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's just, I think that's the hidden blessing or the unsung blessing of being a comics creator is like we're all just such huge fans.
Yeah, for sure.
That when you're a creator, it's just because it's in you, because you can't imagine doing anything else.
Yeah.
With you can't not do these things.
Yeah.
Like, I may never do this for a living, but I'm always going to do it.
Yeah. Any part of just making comics in general just like makes me happy.
Yeah, and
having any part of that is just so cool, and it's an honor because it's, for some reason, it's something I kind of know how to do. I feel like every other aspect of my life I'm terrible at, but comics is something that's like sort of comes natural to me. Like it's still hard work and it still sucks most times, but it's
still work. Work is still work.
Yeah, but it's still fun to me. It's still something I want to dedicate time to. It's not like mowing the lawn or like I don't know what else. What's another? I don't know. I don't know where my thought was going with that. But yeah, it's work that I enjoy. It's hard, but I do it because I want to do it, and I help people because I want to help them, not just because I feel obligated or anything. I think it's just. I think that's why the industry is so cool in the sense where there's a space for kind of everyone who just, if you love comics, we could find something for you to do, whether it be like editing or lettering or coloring. I think. If you have a passion for something, you could find, your spot or place in it. And that's always, I think, important and cool to tell people too, is because people come up to me too and ask, oh man, don't you wish you knew how to draw? But it would be cool and it would be convenient. But at the same time, it's always like a thrill to, like my writing style is usually pretty similar, right? Like I write in script format. So it's almost just like similar or whatever. You've seen a comic script, it's almost like a movie script or something, But yeah, I write pretty, basic and kind of just let my artist kind of go nuts. But it's always cool to see, I write in the same style, but see it interpreted through different artists because it's sometimes comes out drastically different. And it's cool. It's always such a rush. I feel like if I drew my own comics, I would just like obsess over it being perfect instead of, oh, how's this going to look? Like, what's this page going to look like? Like, oh, I can't wait to see how he draws this sequence, So getting to work with tons of different cartoonists is always just so cool. And I get so stoked on it because with something like Wrapped Up, we kind of created it I had to give myself this opportunity to just work with so many like amazing artists, and like getting to work with like Scoot and Sean Dove and all the people, amazing creators who did all the backups and stuff. It's just, I write the same way I would write for Scoot, but, I worked with like 10, 12 different artists on that book, and everyone draws differently. And it's just so cool seeing, how an artist brings a story to life. It's always like a thrill to me.
No, that's, I haven't, had the pleasure of having that happen. I've just started writing my own stuff that I'm, also drawing, and I can assure you that you will obsess over if you were to go into the drawing arena, you would definitely obsess over everything. The closest I can get to that feeling is seeing colors come in.
Yeah.
Because I've colored myself plenty of times, but that's more out of necessity than desire. So having colors come in, it's you get that little bit of rush. So I can only imagine seeing your words made images, being 100 times as like awesome as that.
It is. It's great. And it's for me, it's weird because I feel like comics sometimes for me, the ones I work on are never real until I'm like looking at it or like holding it in my hand. So it really is this weird kind of magic because at the end of the day, I'm just like a dude scribbling like nonsense on a paper, but like an artist is like, this is the advice I always tell people is like, when you're a writer, as a comics writer, our job is to tell the story to the artist, and the artist is telling it to the reader, right? So like just seeing how it's brought to life and seeing that missing piece is just always just so cool, because I feel like collaboration in comics is just so important, and I feel like chemistry and stuff like that is so important. I feel like that's why working with people like Scoot and Miranda and all these other amazing cartoonists, it's a level of like trust, getting to like, if they like get what I'm doing. Not that I'm writing this super deep thought-provoking work, but it's so important to kind of just like vibe with the people you're making comics with, because if they get what you're doing, they could just knock it out of the park, and instead of being like, oh hey, here's this thing, write this, draw this, do this, don't change it. I'm just like, hey man, here's what I think would be funny, do your thing. Oh my god, this is so much funnier. And that constantly happens. It happens with Wrapped Up. It's been happening with Mayor Goodboy, where stuff just, I like it being a collaboration. So sometimes the stuff, and almost all the time, ends up being way funnier than what's on the written page, And I feel like that's what's so cool about just being like a comics writer, is it always turns out different, and almost usually for the better if you have, a good creative partner.
Yeah. Collaboration has been like I've been very lucky myself to have great writers who are just full on down just to have a collaborative effort. I don't think I've had anyone who's been ultra, no, it has to be this way or anything like that. And even when there's occurrences where that might have been a request, it was always, given under respectful circumstances, like, like I would like to try it this way, and
of course,
I would like to, I really think it'll work this way or whatever. And what you said about the writers telling it to the artist and the artist telling it to the reader, I've never heard that before, but that makes such amazingly perfect sense. To kind of just like shorthand the relationship that, a real collaborative effort should be.
Well, you have to kind of look at it that way, because it's really easy to get lost in the idea of, I guess, like standing out when you're like a writer. And I think the biggest mistake I think a lot of people make when they're first starting to make comics is they kind of overcompensate that by writing a lot of dialogue or writing a lot of stuff and all that. Like a great comic page shouldn't, because there's not a set rule, but I think like a really good writer is like is the same thing as like a really good film composer. They're just like this like added element of the story, whereas the artist is taking you through it. And a good comics writer, you kind of don't really notice they're writing too much, because if it's too flashy, you notice it. Like, I don't want to try and overcompensate by writing super snappy dialogue to want to stand out for some stupid reason, And again, I think that's why I said, where trust comes into it, you kind of just have to like trust in the story you're telling, right? And hope that the artist you're working with gets what you're doing, and kind of just create something out of that, I think. So it's cool, but the best comics I've ever made have always been written loose and letting an artist have creative freedom, because I think the best comics are always going to be the ones that like people have fun making them. Like you could tell, I could pick up a book and I could tell that someone really loved drawing this panel, or someone really loved writing this issue. Like that sincerity comes across in comics, and I think that's kind of rare in any format. And I think that's a really special thing about comics is there's, with movies and music and all this stuff, there's so many filters and things that, will pass through it. Like, with a movie, it goes through screenwriters and producers and editors and all this stuff. But comics are a very kind of pure form of storytelling, because the same sense is like working with, an artist you have really good chemistry with. Say you're working with an editor. A really good editor is going to understand what you're doing and just guide you to that. Even if they change stuff, they should know what you're trying to do, sometimes better than what you're doing, And
Mm-hmm.
I think that sort of, I don't know, trust and collaboration, just that fit to me, that makes the best comic, because it's just kind of being on the same page, no pun intended, with your editors and, any of everything, colorist, penciler,
Yeah.
all that stuff. Yeah.
No, I could not agree more.
Yeah.
So I as I mentioned before, I really kind of saw your shift to, well, not necessarily a shift, seeing you go into, YA comics, so
Yeah.
to speak. It seemed very natural for you, and it seems like you've found your kind of home niche. Not to say that you won't ever come out with something that's not that.
Yeah.
Because as a creative person, you're not going to be limited. You're not going to be thinking one way all the time. But seeing how rewarding that is to you, and just peripherally seeing that and all that, and other people I know who have dipped their toes into that,
Yeah.
it's really made me consider like going into that myself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
And
appreciate that, dude. Because for the longest time, I like career wise and just creatively, starting off, I always kind of just, like I said, I didn't set out to make kids comics. I kind of just wrote the stuff, the bad jokes that make me laugh, and just like the stupid stuff I want. I think about, so every comic I write is gonna have like pizza and like, probably someone like skating and probably someone like barfing, maybe some jokes about gorillas. Like that's always kind of like, that's what you sign up for when you buy a Scheidt comic. But I always kind of felt like I was stuck in this weird spot between indie comics and like mainstream, because my stuff wasn't, I didn't do like sad white guy comics, and I couldn't draw. And at the same time, I'm not like setting out like, like Batman, Spider-Man, all that stuff's cool to me.
yeah.
But like, that's not my lifelong dream, is to like write that stuff. Like that would be cool. Don't get me wrong. But I was never actively like trying to, get someone to let me do like a Joker's graphic novel or something, So like, honestly, it like working on kids comics, it is this like natural thing to me, because I'm still, working and working the same way that I kind of would if I was publishing my own stuff still. But there's a bigger purpose with it. I care, understanding of just with creating, content for kids, and knowing the what comes with that, being able to influence kids and being able to create content for them. And, maybe they read my book and it's like, they're going through a tough time in their life, and the 5 minutes of reading one of my comics makes them laugh, like that sort of stuff is like why I do it, like, because I remember when I was a kid, the stuff that gave me comfort and stuff that I liked, that stuff mattered, and I'll never forget that, so like I take stuff like that really seriously. So being able to find an avenue to kind of like explore that stuff and kind of validate like my upbringing and all that stuff, like really, really means a lot to me.
Well, that's a very, I think, kind of awesome way to look at it. And I think as creators, we all kind of want to, in the barest level, we want to have something that makes people, lifts people up.
Yeah.
Even if it's just for a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's definitely something I've, had a lot of thinking about and considering and things like that. And that's, fueled a lot of the things I've been working on.
Yeah.
Things I've done, like making music for the books. Like I wanted to create some sort of additional,
see, that's awesome too,
escape for that and all that. So yeah, I can, I really respect people who take that approach, because, art is for the artist, when it's created, but, having a conscience about, its possible effect on other people, especially with, storytelling and stuff like that. I think that's a really great road to take yourself down, and a kind of like a nice mindset to get yourself into, because I think even if it is just for 5 minutes or whatever, if little kid's having a bad day, because I've definitely used comics as an escape.
Yeah,
I've used music as an escape, and so many of us do. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention it. If you threw a stone at any comic book creator, they used it. They comics got to them through some bad point in their life.
Yeah, for sure.
And the idea of using what it meant to you to create something to refill that well for somebody else.
Yeah,
is just. I mean, I can think of no better thing.
Yeah, and
to do with that.
I do not know how I ever figured that out. I think it's kind of like a underlying thing, because I think, I don't know, when you're a creator and when you're a writer and you make art, like you said, so much of that is me. So many of these books are me. But it's strange because I think if someone who knows me really well, right, like if my brother or sister or someone read one of my comics, they're like, oh yeah, Dave definitely wrote that, But to be able to have that, but then to have a stranger read that and just be like, oh hey, this is cool, I like this is funny, I like, I always hear really funny feedback. Like if I'll meet fans at a show or something, I'll be like, hey dude, what was your favorite issue or something? And kids will always find really funny, specific things. Like, oh God, there was one since a kid wrote a letter to me. It was saying, it wasn't quite like a book review, but he was kind of just reviewing it. And he's like, oh God, I wish I had it. Basically, one of the highlights was like, yeah, I liked it because this wizard puked in a book. And he's like, and I was like, hey man, yeah, I like it too. I wrote that, and there's no underlining thing of that. That's just something that makes me laugh. And for that to connect is like, great, dude. You think that was funny? I thought that was funny too. Thank you. That's great. I think that's really gross and funny. That's, a good way to describe me would be gross and funny. So it's seeing that connect on just a bunch of different levels, is really cool, because with my personality being in these books, it's never, you don't need to know me to understand them. It's not this deep thing. It's just very much something I would help out make, but just as much as when me growing up watching weird, listening to Weird Al and Ren and Stimpy, funny, gross stuff that made me laugh when I was little, Mad Magazine, there's something to connect with that, and that's cool. And even if I don't set out to be like, oh, I think kids really like this, this, and this, I'm just a huge weirdo who just makes myself laugh all the time. So most times if you read a joke in one of my books, it's just something stupid that I think's funny. And, at the end of the day, as long as one person's like, yeah, that's pretty good, I've done my job, so I'm cool with it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, we've talked a bit about how, comics and creation, all that, how, that just can bring bright spots to people's days and things like that. And I know something that brings joy to your heart, aside from comics, is, what's happening right now this month. And if you had your way, I'm sure all year round, but Halloween.
It pretty much is. I'm always just surrounded by skulls anyway, so it pretty much is.
Of the Halloween people I know,
yeah.
Which I use as a term of endearment.
Well, yeah.
As the father of a 4-year-old girl who I'm pretty sure is going to be a Halloween person.
Oh yeah.
Considering what every the past couple Octobers she's been able to say anything.
Yeah.
It's all excitement about Halloween.
If you're already feeling the vibe, she's into it. It's easy to pick up on.
Or she likes to say Halloween.
Yeah. Add some sound effects or something. Yeah, please.
So I was kind of wondering, what started that appreciation of the holiday, of the aesthetic, of the, because you like to collect and trade or sell the vintage or old school decorations, tapes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I peripherally on Twitter see is that the word? I see on Twitter, interactions you have with other people, or you're putting stuff up. People are like, "Oh, look, Dave, I found this," or tagging you in fun, cool stuff. And I was, I'm not a Halloween person myself, but I kind of feel I'm kind of getting there.
Yeah.
Probably because my kids are gonna be all jazzed for it as they get older and older. So what started it? What was the
I
the
think
first?
I think just generally, I was always really into it because I think, like, not to sound too corny or like goth or emo or anything, but like as a kid, I always kind of knew that I was different, and just generally always being around my dad reading, horror novels, and we used to let us watch like Chucky and all that stuff. It was kind of just like something that I was always interested in. I've always been interested in horror movies and monsters and stuff like that. And it just, again, just with like comics, it's something that just feels natural to me. It's just something that really brings me a lot of joy. And I think just generally, I really think, and as an adult, something that really means a lot to me is like community. And those two things coming together, like Halloween is kind of the only holiday that's about everyone in your neighborhood, like Christmas and Thanksgiving and all this stuff is kind of just like your loved ones and everyone in your house. But Halloween is like everyone's decorating their house, everyone's knocking on your door, everyone's eating candy, everyone's dressing up. So for me, it was always kind of just that one day of the year where I kind of felt kind of like normal. Again, not to sound corny, but like these things I've always been into. It was just always this kind of escape from the normal world. Seeing, I'm 33, so when I was a kid, like growing up in like the neighborhood I grew up in, like the neighborhood was literally transformed. It was like another place. So being able to like run around in there and wearing like, skull masks and, there's monsters and goblins and all that stuff just like running around. It was such a thrill seeing the regular world kind of like disappear for one night. And it just, the build up to that was always just so like important to me. And like, I don't know, I always have all these memories of going to like, there's this place called Riley's Trick Shop, and it was just like a basic Halloween store. And I just remember my mom bringing me there as a kid. And I remember just seeing, Freddy and Jason and skulls and just all this stuff. And again, it was this completely different world. It was, this place unlike anything you've seen before, and I just love the idea of, I don't know, kind of just like being someone else for a night, and kind of just being surrounded by all these things I love and everyone's into it, it's just really cool to me.
Well, you've had a pretty lovely explanation as to what it means for you and how you followed into that. And I've kind of, looking back, I can kind of see like I kind of really enjoyed the aesthetic of Halloween myself. My wife and I, we have differing opinions on horror movies.
Yeah.
She likes the supernatural, spooky, like ghost possession type stuff, and I'm like, where's the gore?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, I remember very distinctly why Dead Alive.
Oh yeah, the best. That's one of my favorites.
The first time I actually encountered that movie was we were waiting in line for a haunted house about 15 years ago. And it was just like playing this like bad VHS transfer, like blown up on a wall.
Yeah.
While we're waiting in line. And I'm like, and it started like right before like the main gore scene, the
lawnmower.
The lawnmower and all that.
Yeah.
Just before that started. So it's just like I'm just watching this thing like, what the hell is this thing?
Yeah.
And then I was actually describing it to a friend, and he's like, "Oh, that sounds like this movie." And so then, like, this is back in the days of Netflix on DVD. So he's like, he actually had like burned copies of it or whatever. So he's like, "Yeah, I take this," and I was just like, "Oh wow, this is like the most like disgustingly gory thing I've ever seen." And this is coming from a kid whose parents had legal and not legal cable growing up.
Yeah. No, it literally is. I remember the first time I saw that, it was just like, what? That literally is your first inclination. You're like, what is this? Like, what is going on? Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it was just like, it was one of the first times I was almost like, this is almost too much,
Yeah.
but I'm still watching it.
The gift about
Um,
the movie too, though, is like getting to like show people that who've never seen that
mhm.
is like the best because yeah, I just because like I said, you see that and you're like, it's the most over the top ridiculous thing, but it has so much heart and love in it, which
Yeah,
like normally you would think something like that would just be trashy gore or whatever.
yeah,
Peter
exactly.
Jackson,
It's
yeah, Dead Alive is just like it has such a like sweet, beautiful love story in that movie. Yet it has like the most disgusting, horrible things in it like you've ever seen. You know, it has a dude beating his
yes,
baby in a park, and all this like horror.
stuffing a baby in a blender or a zombie baby in a blender or whatever.
I really
It's
wish I could go back in time and see that for the first time because it must have been like something else, man. Because that movie is just the best.
yeah, and I'm seeing this knowing it's Peter Jackson, and
Yeah.
I'm like, and it's just like after I've seen Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson,
Yeah.
and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, I guess like,
Yeah.
and then and after that is when I kind of started seeing some of the more
like
quirky things in his style in the movies.
You'll watch Lord of the Rings and there'll be like a really gross, weird close up of like what's his name, like Grima Wormtongue,
Yeah,
like eating a tomato, really gross. That's totally like a weird Dead Alive, like weird, like what's it called, like a Dutch angle, like all those weird, like super gross close ups.
or like even just like just the scene where the orcs are the Urkai are debating eating Merry and Pippin.
Oh yeah.
And then they're like tearing into the other orc, and it's like a random intestine flies up in the air, and it's just like, yeah, it's like, okay, I these things connect more where I didn't really register with it when I saw it, other than like, cool little gore they snuck in or whatever, because it's not technically a human, so they can get away with that in PG-13. So
that's another weird thing where I think when you're not, as a creator, when you're not actively kind of aware of like what your influences are, Dead Alive and like Peter Jackson's work was very much like a huge influence on my work, even if it doesn't show. Because like I said, you watch those movies and he's probably like laughing his ass off making that. Like it's so gross and so specific to someone's sense of humor. And that's such a thrill seeing something that is like entirely like personal to someone, like Dead Alive is very much like so specific. But like I said, the same sense as when I make something and I write a stupid joke in a comic that makes me laugh, if I know it made like a kid laugh, that's like the best feeling in the world because you still enjoyed making the thing. And like when you have someone else enjoy it, it's that much cooler because it's like, hey, there's another weirdo like me. There's a kid who was like me when I was that age, like who likes weird, funny stuff like that, And it's the best. Yeah, I love just like knowing someone had fun creating something, like having that thing in the back of your head. You'll listen to a song or you'll watch a movie and you're like, these people must have had a blast making this,
Do you have like a favorite horror movie? I guess. Well, I guess horror movies are kind of like metal in that there's so many variations within the genre itself, that it's almost more of a medium than a genre. So do you have like a favorite like subgenre? I guess I guess that's what that term is technically used for.
I think with me with like favorite lists, it's always kind of shifting. But I mean, some of my all-time favorites would be like I love like the original Fright Night. I love Lost Boys. I love most of the Freddy movies, like Nightmare on Elm Street rules. Obviously Dead Alive and like Bad Taste and all the Peter Jackson stuff, like Frighteners is awesome. I think something that my work isn't like directly, it's not directly, noticeable in my work, but like 80s horror in general, I think is always something I really, really enjoy because I love the mixture of comedy and horror. I think it makes the highs higher, the lows lower with stuff like that. So yeah, it's always changing, but I think just generally I really love 80s stuff, and I've been getting a lot of weird 70s stuff too. So it's kind of all over the place for me. I don't try to stick in any specific like horror genre, but I'm not really into like like torture porn stuff. I think that stuff's like dorky. It's just like gross. I don't like try hard stuff, like stuff that's like really just trying to be like messed up. I'm generally into. I love camp. I love monster movies. I love vampire stuff. Yeah, so just normally I think I'm just into like kind of like fun horror movies. I like having fun when I'm watching a movie. It's always a good escape for me. Yeah.
So, would you agree that the first horror movie a kid should watch should be Monster Squad?
I was just talking to someone about that, about how like a kid nowadays would view that, because I feel like for me as a kid growing up, like, basically like early 90s, like I was born late 80s, but I was literally like a baby. So I don't really remember any of that. But we would watch, Monster Squad, and we'd watch, Goonies and all that stuff. It's weird because I think it's kind of subjective, because I feel like some of the creatures in Monster Squad are like legit, like really scary. Like I think the creature in that design is like still.
It's the best. I think it's the best version of that creature.
It's awesome. It's so scary and like slimy and like just like you could touch him. You know what I mean? Like it feels like a real creature. It's really gross. So I think it's kind of just about, I don't know, just like what your kid's into and just trusting that they know the difference between something that's real and something that's not. And I think I would like to think that I turned out okay, but maybe it's because of all the stuff that like maybe my dad shouldn't have let us watch. Because like I said, we were watching like Leprechaun and like Chucky and like Night of the Comet and all these movies when we were little. But I think if you're like a cool parent, I think Monster Squad's a really cool start, because it's a little bit of scary, but it's also like empowering, because they feel like real kids. And it's real kids like saving the world and like fighting creatures and stuff. And I think maybe that's why I connected with it as a kid. It wasn't just like a scary movie. It was about like, I kind of think to, hey, what would it be like if me and my sister found a Frankenstein, or, like.
Yeah.
I think there would be, depending on like what your kid's into. But I mean, it rules. It still holds up, And I think so many movies of that era do hold up, because like I said, the characters in that, the kids in that feel like real kids, just as much as like, I think why Stranger Things is such a huge thing nowadays is because all those kids are great and they feel like real kids, whereas like adults can watch it and be like, oh, hey, I remember that. Like you're nostalgic for it or whatever, but kids can watch and be like, oh yeah, this is like a kid I know, So I think they would be into it, because I think there's a really nice sincerity to Monster Squad, Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to say, if I had to lay down a favorite scary movie, even though as an adult it's not scary, even as a kid it really wasn't scary, but just like a favorite horror Halloween monster movie, that one has just like latched onto me so hard. Like I've seen that movie when I was growing up so many times, and I watched it a few times as an adult, and I still can't There's still little onions being cut whenever Frank goes into the portal at the end.
How old are you?
I'm 38.
Okay, so I remember, I don't know if this was like this with you, and this is a very weird thing with just being a horror fan in general, is I remember kind of just as much as, like I said, my, my love of Halloween kind of stems to just my passion of like monsters and scary stuff and like horror movies and stuff. Like I remember when like Monster Squad, and not to be like gatekeepy or anything, but when like Monster Squad was just this like weird movie that I would watch with my dad and sister. And then to grow older and like know that like millions of people were into this, not just, you. But it was cool though. It had this really nice, sweet sort of like, kind of like, like a good story you connect with, and you feel like this was made for me. Like Monster Squad, I feel like that was a movie made for like me and like my sister and my dad. It has something for all of us, and that was really, really strange and really cool seeing how many people connect with that, because at the time I didn't think anyone knew what that movie was,
Yeah, it's. I think that's one of the more interesting things nowadays, is like just all these people saying like, yeah, I love that thing you also loved when you were a kid, and just feeling it's simultaneously awesome and also like, oh, well, okay, I guess this wasn't just the cult thing I loved and all that, because
it like transcends like nostalgia, because it's not just about like making you feel like, because there's tons of stuff that I liked when I was younger that like I could watch now and be like, this sucks, or like I grew out of it, or like I'm not into it, because I really try to avoid the whole nostalgia thing. But then there's stuff where, like I said, I'll watch Monster Squad and now I'll legit be like, this is still a really fun movie. This is still really well done, and like I get why so many people are into that. But I love that little thing of like being that personal little touch of being like, this movie is just our movie, Mm-hmm. And then you grow up and you realize, hey, this is cool. Everyone has this little thing, and I think also too, growing up in the time I grew up, like early 90s with horror movies and stuff. I know so many of my friends growing up and friends in school where their parents would not let them watch that stuff. So there was that really cool danger element of like sleeping over at your buddy's house, or, catching something on cable when your parents aren't home or something. Mm-hmm. And I remember so many of the messed up stuff I probably saw as a kid was, there was this video store that me and my friend Mike in maybe like 5th grade we used to go to, and there was a teenager who would work there certain days, and he would just like let us rent whatever, so he would we could go there and rent Dead Alive, and we could go there and rent Chucky, and we could go there and rent I don't know, like really like messed up stuff. And there was that really cool danger element of him being like, yeah, like, don't tell anyone I lent you this, or what do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just cool, that whole personal touch of like, this is just as much as like horror movies, felt really personal to me. Like Halloween was something too, where I felt like this was my thing,
Mm-hmm.
And I like connected to it too much. So I loved experiencing so much stuff like that, having that independence and having that like danger of something being like, hey, this is for me. I shouldn't be watching this, or I shouldn't be reading this, like I think when you're a kid, it gives you this like freedom that like, you don't have a lot of freedom when you're a kid. So when you have the choice of being like, oh, here's the book I want to read, having that sort of freedom to be able to pick what you want to like listen to or read or whatever, that means a lot to kids, and if they choose to like read something that I wrote, that's like so much cooler, because there's like a million other things you could do nowadays, and still have, I had a parent tell me that like she kept going into her kid's room and he was like reading my book when he should have been asleep. Like he kept acting like he was asleep, and she'd go in there, and he'd be reading wrapped up under the blankets. And
that's the best review you could ever get.
I'm literally like, this is the coolest thing in the world, because this kid is literally
like, I'm sorry, this causes like an issue for you as a parent. You want your kid to go to sleep, but I'm like, you've just made my day.
Like, this rules. Your kid is essentially breaking the law to read my comics, and that's so tight. So it's like super, super cool. So yeah, I don't know. That sort of thing is like cool, and I think important for kids to kind of have that sort of danger of being like, should I be watching this? I don't know if this is cool. This is like too scary, but I keep on watching it. You know what I mean? I think it's cool to give that, to provide to kids, and like let them kind of do their thing.
Yeah, as a parent now, I think about that quite often sometimes, where I don't want to deprive my kids of having that almost just like it's a rite of passage. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Of, watching the movie your parents told you you're too young to watch, or at the very least, in my house, my parents' room was on our living room was in the floor below my parents' bedroom, so we would hear them get up. Oh yeah, perfect. See. So if we heard them get up, we'd have time to turn off the TV. Turn off the Scrambled Spice channel. There you go. No comment. But yeah, so you're a 90s kid. You're I was born in 82, but I think you're still in the age range to know what a hot box is. Oh yeah. Sure, yeah. So, but even just that, like a lot of times my brother and I, especially during the summer, we would just, for no other reason other than we were kids and we could. Those were the kids scramblers, right? When you could get like free HBO. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, basically the cable guy would come to your house, and for like, you'd slip him some extra cash, and he'd come back out with one of those. And you could watch Tales from the Crypt and stuff. That's the best. Yeah. See Joe Pesci get sliced in half with a chainsaw. and not the edited version they would play on like Fox or Channel 50.
I love that. I love that. That's immediately what do you think of with Tales from the Crypt? You're like, yeah, Joe Pesci getting cut in half. That's the best.
What was that movie? John Carpenter's Body Bags.
Oh yeah.
With Stacy Keach in the wig.
Somebody just posted that recently, and I was like, because I've actually never seen that, and everyone says how like awesome it is. And,
I remember really digging it. It's got some good stuff in there. I don't know if how it holds up now.
Yeah.
I know, post 80s Carpenter can be hit and miss with a lot of people.
No, I mess with like a lot of that.
But
and he's pretty much like a crypt keeper, right? Like it's John Carpenter acting like a
yes.
Yeah.
I believe he's like he's like a mortician or a coroner.
I'm down, yeah.
And he's examining the bodies and stuff like that. It's kind of one of those things where you're like, I don't know if it actually turned into a series or it was like supposed to be like a pilot for a series.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, stuff like that. So as a parent, I'm like kind of like straddling that line, like, well, I'm trying to be responsible, but in 6-8 years when my young daughter's like old enough to like be able to like be smart enough to know how to sneak around the house or whatever, like how's that going to play out? Especially these days, it's a bit scary because there's so many things that can go that should not be viewed by anybody, much less a child. But yeah, so it's kind of finding that, I was kind of joking with my wife, not recently, probably actually a couple of years ago, but like I should probably just like bait the house with stuff that would be okay with her, with one of the kids like watching, even though they're supposed to be too young to watch it, to kind of distract them from like trying to find it somewhere else.
Yeah. Like, please don't like find alt-right on YouTube, but you can watch Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
So
much worse stuff nowadays. Like the worst we could have saw when we were kids would be like, like Faces of Death, or like I said, like this.
Which I saw that.
Oh yeah, we rented those too. That teenager who worked at the video store, he let us rent that, and I still haven't recovered from that.
So you grew up in Chicago, right?
Yeah.
Which area of Chicago?
So I grew up in Mount Greenwood. So it's basically just like, I don't know, it's like essentially suburbs. It's still Chicago, but it's like it's like southwest suburbs, or not suburbs, but it's southwest Chicago. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Because I was wondering, I'm like, the way you're describing this video store, I guess everyone had that video store back in the day.
The whole thing with us is like, and I think it was generally the same thing as Blockbuster wouldn't carry certain stuff. Like they wouldn't get like, if you would find Dead Alive, it would be like some weird censored version of it. Yeah. But like we used to go to this place called Video Playground, and they would have everything. They would have, like Driller Killer, and I love that my reference keeps being like Leprechaun and Chucky because that's all I can think of right now. But they literally have
Monkey Shines, things like that.
Yeah, hell yeah, Monkey Shines. Yeah, dude, that's a good one. That's a deep cut. See, that's the thing I'm into too. I like apes and stuff, so that's good. I remember just like so many, the experience when you're little going to a movie store where like, a bunch of VHS covers are like burned into your brain. Like you've never seen them, but you'd always like look at the cover. Like that was the place you would just go and like look at. Like I remember the cover for the movie House, like the one with like the zombie head.
Yes.
I remember just like staring at that all the time, and like The Exterminator. Do you know that?
I'm sure if I saw the cover, I'd be like, yes.
Yeah, it was like this dude, this gnarly looking like buff dude, and he's holding like a flamethrower, and he's wearing this like sick like welder's costume, but he's like jacked, like you could see he has like crazy biceps. And it was just some weird random like direct to VHS like action horror movie thing. But I remember just being like obsessed with these covers. But for whatever reason, I think we would just kind of like end up renting stuff we've already seen. So, we'd be like, hey, this movie looks sick, but we would just end up watching like Jason Takes Manhattan Again or something. But it was always fun though. I missed that. That was always really cool. I wish I knew that dude's name. It was literally just this teenager who worked there. And it was this kind of unspoken thing where he would just like let us rent it, and like it kind of just like not say anything. We just give him the tag and he'd grab it, and like it was great. God bless that dude. He's great.
We had a video store like that. It was I think it was called H&H. I don't know. It was on Belmont. just west of Elston.
Oh man.
And if you're Chicagoans, if you're familiar with Kuma's, it was like almost
Okay, yeah.
it was like almost across the street from there.
Okay.
So yeah, we would go in there, and we never really rented anything. But I remember we'd go in there to rent a video game or whatever, and then if you turn the corner, that's where they had like all the horror stuff. And I bring up Monkey Shines because
that's a good one.
That when I was real little, that used to freak me out.
Yeah.
Like isn't that, just
isn't the cover? He has like red eyes, and it's like
and it's just the little monkey with the red eyes, and it's just like it would freak me out so much, and I would always be just like so scared walking in there because I knew that cover was right around the corner.
How old were you?
Oh God, I had to be less than 10.
Yeah, I love that.
So,
that's a scary cover though, dude.
And then, but also, I would.
Yeah, that's horrifying.
I would also always turn the corner to go look at it though.
Oh yeah, you got it.
So it's just having that. Yeah,
it's fun because it's like fun to be scared. It's that weird thrill. Like some people just don't get that, and that's fine. Like some people just don't like horror movies, and that's cool. Like I don't think I'm like smarter or like cooler than anyone for liking that. But it's just like it's like a thrill. It's cool. It's like it's I love being terrified by like what is it like a dude's it isn't like a dude's spirit possesses a monkey and he's like killing his enemies or something, right?
Yeah, I think so. I remember the How Did This Get Made podcast had an episode on it a couple years ago.
Yeah, it was like the dude that like.
And that I don't think I've ever actually seen it.
Yeah,
to be honest,
like hired the monkey, or he like it's like a helper monkey because the guy's like messed up or he's like handicapped or something, and I think like the monkey just like starts like doing his bidding and like killing his enemies. Like when he's sleeping, the monkey's like straight up like murdering like the people who are like mean to him and stuff, which is actually kind of sick, for what it's worth.
Yeah,
like good for him, That's good, but like, yeah, that's good. I miss simple concepts like that. That's good. Good stuff.
The halcyon days of direct to video, because then it was direct to DVD, now it's direct to streaming, and it's still not the same because people are actually having higher quality these days.
I'll never top Monkey Shites, man. That's never
or I guess not. Maybe there's just more people doing quality, but there's still more people doing it because based on Mike Norton's bad movie binge watching he does. Yeah. there's still plenty of modern equivalents.
Yeah, and I think a weird thing, people not to keep talking about Monkey Shines, but I could talk about this movie for like an hour. George Romero directed it, which a lot of people don't realize.
Oh, he did.
Yeah, like he's just like people just know him from Night of the Living Dead. He's done some wild stuff, but yeah, good stuff.
Oh God, what movie did he do? I remember something with the guy's face or something.
Was it like that Misfits one? Like the Misfits was it Bruiser?
I think it was Bruiser.
Yeah. The dude like just doesn't have a face. Yeah.
I remember that being like touted as like, oh, return to form or something like that, and I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen it, but
I remember just in the 2000s when I was just like a weird like weird kid with like acne who loved like the Misfits. Like I think like they had like I think they had a song in the movie or something. Okay. And I think that's why we rented it, because we were like, oh my God, dude. Like, I think the Misfits might actually be in it or something.
Okay.
But in that era, that was like that same era of renting movies and stuff. That was 2000. So I was in like, I think I was in like 6th or 7th grade. And yeah, that was good.
Remember when just something that simple was enough to get you hyped about something? Like, the Misfits are in it for like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see this.
Good, yeah.
The good old days.
That was good.
Before we get too far into it, I very lately posted on Twitter asking for some questions for you. Apologies for that. But we do have one question, actually 2 questions, and they are from perennial question asker, thank you, John Westhoff at Anti-Drummer.
Yeah, love you, John.
Dave's laughing so hard, John, because I told him before the show that I don't think anyone's going to ask a question, but I'm pretty sure John Westhoff will, because you always ask a question,
it came through.
And you are very reliable that way, and I thank you.
Just that dude.
So he's asking, oh, this is a tough one.
Right.
You have to give up one.
Okay.
Pizza or spooky decorations? Which do you choose?
Oh, man. Well, maybe I would have like more years added to my life if I stopped eating pizza.
Okay.
That is tough. And I know I have this weird persona of being like the pizza dude. But I told someone recently, like, now, dude, I've been in like a chicken phase lately.
Okay.
So I would give up. Oh man, like completely give up.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I mean, here's the thing though. Like giving up, does that mean collecting? Because I could still just like look at stuff and admire it, even if I gave it up, right?
I would have to assume. Well, if you're giving up pizza, you're giving up the consumption of it. But I imagine you'd still be able to see pizzas and smell pizzas.
Yeah, but I could like.
So
I could just go and like walk down the street and like look at like a skeleton on someone's porch.
So I think it would be like you can't possess any or put any up. Yeah, that's what I would take that as.
Man, the rest of the podcast is just going to be me like contemplating this. The first time I'm serious in this whole thing, I'm just like, oh man, I would give up spooky decorations.
Okay.
Because pizza's great and it's always kind of reliable.
I can stand behind that choice for you because again, you can go around and you can see spooky decorations. You can still appreciate them in some way.
Yeah, I'm in a Facebook group called it's like a serious group called I Love Skulls, and it's just like dudes with like neck tattoos just like posting pictures of their motorcycles and stuff with skulls on it. So I can just go on there. I can just go on I Love Skulls and we're good.
I'm sure you did, but there's a documentary that came out a few years ago about people who put up like crazy Halloween decorations.
Was it American Scream?
Yes.
Yeah, I love it. That's one of my favorite documentaries. I love that. That's so fun. That's streaming again. I think that's on Amazon right now.
Oh, is it? Okay. Yeah. I think they did a follow-up to it. I don't know if they...
Yeah, I love it. And that to me like really solidifies like the spirit and like... Because there's a bunch of documentaries about that sort of stuff. And that one just really I don't know, that one's just very sweet. And it really solidifies my like connection to Halloween and stuff. Because a lot of those there's a lot of other like Halloween, the terms like a haunter. Like about like haunts and stuff. I like those like lame like extreme ones where it's like, like a dude who's like dressed like Slipknot like spits on you and like throws like pig heads at you or something. And like and like they scream like like if you're into that, that's fine. But like for me, I'm not. There was I love that you brought that up because there's in the suburbs a few years ago there was this like Rob Zombie haunted house like attraction thing.
Yes.
Yeah, Rob Zombie's American Nightmare.
Yes.
And like I found out about it like 3 years after it was like a thing, which I would never go. But I was if you ever want a good laugh, you could look on Yelp and like look at like Yelp reviews of haunted houses. Like it's really, really funny. And one of them, someone gave it like 1 of 5 stars or whatever, and they're like, yeah, if you think someone in like a Slipknot mask screaming "fuck you" for an hour is scary, then like this is a place for you. So literally, it's just like dudes with like dudes in overalls and like pig heads and like they throw like bones at you and stuff. If that scares you, that's fine, but it's not for me. Yeah,
I think for the most part, the Halloween people that I come across are really into the spooky and the aesthetic, and when things get mean, when it's just like it's aggressive, it's not something that's really well liked or
because even to
looked at fondly.
Even for me, like someone being like super into like horror films and like I like stuff that's like super gory. Like my Halloween like aesthetic, like the stuff that I'm really into is like cutesy, safe, kind of like like pumpkins, like weird like little pumpkin babies and stuff. Like that's the stuff that I love, because it reminds me of like how they would decorate your school for Halloween. Like it could never be too scary, but it's still Halloween and stuff. So yeah, for me it's just like I don't know, dude. I love pumpkins and skulls and stuff, man. I don't know what to say.
No, that's great. No, and that's the kind of like appreciation of everything that I can really get behind. It's just when things get mean, it's like there's a time and stuff where that might be effective and all that, but like you said, so some dude in a Slipknot mask yelling "fuck you" for an hour is like
throwing bones at you or like hitting a
trash can or something.
Trash can. Yeah, I'm literally just like describing a Slipknot concert. But
no
cool.
offense, no offense to Slipknot,
no,
but
you know what? Like the older I get,
they made it.
yeah, and the older I get, I'm kind of like, hey man, Slipknot's kind of sick, dude. Like I was something I was never really into. I'm kind of like, no, it's kind of some of their stuff's kind of sick. So
it is. It is.
Yeah,
I was talking with this in last episode with Ramon about Slipknot, where it's like, coming up, I was in the junior, senior in high school when they hit big.
Yeah.
And it was all the angry kids.
Yeah.
Who like Slipknot, so it was really kind of like, no, not for me.
Yeah.
But as I've gotten older, I'm like, no, man, these guys like, well, for one, Corey Taylor can fucking sing.
Yeah.
And two, these guitar players are amazing, and their drummers are amazing, both of them.
And they have like lasting power. It's not just like.
Yeah, they've been doing this for 20 plus years now. So.
Like there's like a million bands that like look like them and sound like them, and just like the whole.
Yeah.
Say what you will about the whole new metal thing, but I mean, it's like I think it's not a fluke that those dudes are still around. You know what I mean? Like it's still, so it's cool to see. I like it. So
yeah, there's an Onion article I think about a lot when I see these bands, even like Papa Roach and stuff like that, where it's like, was it band playing State Fair celebrates 30 years of doing exactly what they wanted to do? Because there's a lot of times where it's like, you can like, they're playing the State Fair, oh geez, but it's like, well, they're doing what they want to do though. Like they're not going to, if there's, have you seen that Anvil documentary?
Yes.
And like,
that was the old dudes, right? And that was the dudes
yeah,
yeah, that was nice. Yeah.
Yeah. I actively like don't like the guy, the main guy, but I'm also like appreciative. Like, well, he didn't stop. He kept pushing and pushing, and I'm sure that the hype of the documentary helped with all that. But they're still doing it. They're still writing on that. So it's like,
appreciate that. Yeah, that sounds cool.
So to get back to the questions, John has a follow-up question. He wants
to
know
if there's Slipknot or no?
No, it is not about Slipknot. It's about Mushroom Head.
Hell yeah, dude.
It's any jokes that companies you worked for said, "No way, Squatch Boy."
Oh man, now that we're on the subject of horror movies, this is actually really funny. So if people don't know, or who are listening, who I don't know, maybe have no idea who I am, I don't know why they would make it this far hearing me talk. So I wrote a bunch of like graphic novels for DreamWorks Trolls, and I think, man, it might have been like in the first volume, I tried to hide a Troll 2 joke in it, and it was like very, very neat. I tried to just have a Nilbog sign be like in the background.
Okay.
And the funniest thing in the world, I don't know if like whoever, like the liaison at DreamWorks or whoever, I don't even know who the person was, but I got like the funniest editorial note. Like I was dying laughing. It was so funny. It was just super concise, and it's just like, oh, sorry, there's no goblins in the troll world. Delete this. I was like, okay. So yeah, we had to take out the Nilbog thing. That was very funny. And I think that's the great thing about working with an editor. It is kind of just, I think you somehow, especially when you're writing comics, you get so stuck in your own mode and kind of like your own way of thinking, where you'll sometimes just kind of put something and it's not like it's something that's not cool, but you kind of maybe don't realize it. And that's a good editor will just catch any of that stuff. So I'm sure there's 100 million things that I probably try to sneak in or do, and they're like, no, dude, this is kind of weird, dude. I think the only thing that comes to mind is the Nilbog one. That was pretty good. I just love
that's a great one.
Nilbog. I used to have an email. I wish I still had the screenshot, but yeah, shout out to DreamWorks. I love them. They're great. It's just that was very funny to me. I think the DreamWorks person saw Troll 2 and they knew what they're doing. They're just like, sorry, dude, we can't do this.
No.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Of the notes I've known people who have gotten, that seems to be like the most concise and straightforward and professional. Yeah. It was and it makes sense. It's like, all right, like I'm sure they probably had a chuckle.
Yeah, they're like, this dude trying
if they caught it, they had a chuckle, because
they had to have, because it's like, how are they going to know that Nilbog is goblin backwards? Like, right? Like, no way. Yeah, so that was good. I like that. So if anyone's listening, if you make comics, if you ever want to sneak something into a comic, you just do not put it in the script. I'm dumb. I could have just told my artist to be like, hey, just put a little, put a mailbox sign in the background, but don't tell our editor. That's how you get it. It was literally just in the script, and they're just like, yeah, sorry, there's no goblins in the troll world. So it's cool. Yeah, that's good.
So, we've talked a lot about, spooky stuff.
Yeah.
But something that, as far as I know, is not spooky is the book you're currently working on, and that is Mayor Goodboy.
Yes.
What can you tell us about that in terms of, synopsis, projected release date, stuff like that? If there's anything you can share with that, because I've been I've been, following your progress on it and hearing you talk about it, and how you seem to be extremely proud of how it's coming together and all that.
Yeah.
And it's such a great concept, and just the name Mayor Goodboy.
Yeah, I kind of just do what is there. It's like Pizza Hut or Taco Bell. It's like you kind of know what you're getting when you see that title,
Yeah. So what can you tell us about Mayor Goodboy? What's the deal, man?
So I can't say a lot about it, but I can say that it's a 3 graphic novel series about a town that elects a dog as a mayor, and it becomes legally binding. And the dog hires 2 assistants to just basically help him, run the town and just, win the community over and all that stuff too. It's I don't want to go ahead and shoot myself in the foot and say it's the best thing I've ever written, but it's like it's been really personal for me. It's kind of back to when I was saying, like, there's a lot of weird things when you're creating where like influences and all that kind of show themselves, but you're not really conscious of it. There's a lot of stuff that I'm like touching on in these books that, I hear other people who've like read it already will be like, oh, I like how you put this here and this here and this here. I'm like, oh my God, that's in the book. Like all of these, like, it's very much like, if you know me as a person and just kind of know where I stand, I guess, like politically and stuff, it's very much just kind of a book about empowering kids and showing them that they could make changes in their community, even if it's small. I think it's kind of just serendipitous of how this book, I came up with this years ago, but how it's kind of aligning with like where the world's at right now.
Mm-hmm.
Not to sound too corny, but like Mayor Goodboy is kind of like the friend that I think a lot of kids need right now, and he's for sure kind of like the friend I need right now. And it's the timing is very, very strange in like a cool way, where it's really kind of just providing hopefully some comfort in like a very dark time. And yeah, it's just kind of, it's a lot about like activism and, like I said, empowering kids and kind of just the hijinks of kind of just like a small town and like accepting people for their differences and, finding your clique and all that stuff too. So it's I think when all is said and done, this is going to be a really good comic. I think my co-creator Miranda Harmon is just doing like amazing work. Like, she's an unbelievable cartoonist, and like I said, with stories, at the end of the day, a script is just like a bunch of words on a piece of paper about her. She's literally bringing it to life, and our editors and all the people working on it, it's a huge learning experience, because it's being put up by Random House. So it's like my first like really big, like working for a major publisher.
That's awesome.
And it's been really wild just to see just how things are handled differently, and just all the things that I feel like I've kind of been missing when creating comics, like I love all the stuff that, I've worked on and the people I've worked with. It's always been cool, but it's really weird to see the differences between making comics for like the direct market and then making comics for like the book market.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a really cool learning experience, but I'm very, very, very excited about this series.
Is there an anticipated release date, or is the current state of the world just kind of thrown that into?
So as far as I know, I believe, I think. See, I'm not sure offhand. I know it's 2021, but I'm not sure exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I know things change, and I know like for everyone, the COVID thing kind of like messed up stuff for everyone. So I don't really want to speak officially, but it's slated for 2021. So we're hopefully gonna hit that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, I've really enjoyed this discussion we have. Thank you again for coming on. If you could let the good people listening know where they can find you, so they can, get the first word from you on when Mayor Good Boy will be dropping, and then they can hopefully, if they haven't picked up, go pick up your previous works and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, of course. I'm on all social media platforms. I'm at DAVESCHEIDT, Dave Scheid. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and then I have a website, davescheidt.com. And yeah, I'm just mainly on Twitter, just posting really bad jokes and posting pictures of skeletons and stuff like that. So if that sounds like something you're into, I got a lot for you.
In this time of doom scrolling, Dave's feed is a welcome respite.
oh yeah, thank you, man. I hope so. It's just me kind of just trying not to go crazy, and hopefully, like I said, if it makes someone happy, that's good. That rules. That makes me happy.
All right. Well, Dave, thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. This was awesome.